Do you think triple
I
digit silver is inevitable?
absolutely, Mike. I do think it's inevitable. I hope it lasts.
Hi, I've got Keith Newmeyer from First Majestic Silver with me. How are you doing, Keith?
Great, Mike. It's great having a chance to speak with you. I think this is our first time ever speaking together.
Yeah, we may have run into each other at Silver Summit or one of the conferences like that in the past,
Hmm.
just walking through the convention hall.
Right.
We have sort of crossed paths, but never really stopped and had a discussion. And
Hmm.
you have been in this actually a little bit longer than I have been in it. You started First Majestic Silver in 2002.
Right.
I started investing in gold in 2002, but I really didn't discover silver until April of 2003. So this video, I want to sort of wrap this around triple digit silver because I've been saying this for well over a decade. I think I may have talked about the potential of triple digit silver when I wrote my book. I know that I got laughed at once years ago. I was being interviewed on Financial Sense, Jim Poplava. And I talked about the
Hmm.
gold silver ratio, and I talked about the potential in a rush. If there is monetary demand and people are panicked, if gold goes too high, people switch their preference to silver. And in that type of scenario, which is what happened in 1980, the potential for the gold silver ratio to go to something like a factor of 10 is actually there. That potential exists. It's we had 14 back in 1980, and things are much more out of whack this time around than they were that time. As far as supply demand fundamentals, gold silver ratio. Tell us about the mineable supplies. You know a lot about what's in the ground and what's available. And right
Hmm.
now, the gold silver ratio is in the high 70s, I believe.
Yeah. Well, look, when I put the company together, there was a handful of companies out there that could actually call themselves silver companies. So what I mean by that is 50% of their revenue is from silver. And today, and then the obvious ones, we know them all: Hecla, Coeur d'Alene, Pan American, and there's a variety of others. They all had revenue north of 50%. Now today, they're all far below 50%. All three of those companies and a handful of others have all become gold companies. We could become a gold company tomorrow. There's a lot of gold mines for sale. There's handfuls of gold mines for sale. Gold mines seem to be pretty easy to find when compared to silver mines. There are no silver mines for sale. Silver mines are very, very hard to find, and they generally don't have very long mine lives. So they have, the metallurgy of silver is also more complex. So it's quite easy to extract gold from a piece of rock. It's very much more difficult to do that with silver. It's costly and takes much more time. So you've got all these things against silver that to me makes the current pricing, just unbelievably, I can't understand why. And I look at the mining ratio of 8-to-1 today, and even the scientists think that there's 15 or 16 ounces of silver in the Earth's crust compared to gold, 16-to-1, and we're mining 8-to-1. And when I put the business together 18 years ago, we're mining somewhere around 11 or 12-to-1. So in the last 18 years, that ratio has actually dropped, and there's more silver mines that have come offline during that period of time than have been added.
Yeah, I think USGS says that there's about 17 times more silver in the Earth's crust, but the mineable supplies have been dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody told me years ago, and I want to ask if you can confirm this fact or not, if it's a fact, that silver tends to occur geologically closer to the surface and gold tends to be deeper. So over the couple of millennia that we have been mining gold and silver, more silver has been mined out, and that's the reason that these ratios are dropping. We used to mine about 15 to 1, and that was what the average gold-silver ratio was. It was just the free market doing price discovery of the two currencies that were in circulation, gold and silver. And that ratio, now we're up at a 78 to, silver's price is 1/78 of gold's price today. Yet, what's coming out of the ground, you're saying, is there's 1 ounce of gold for every 8 ounces of silver, not every 78 ounces of silver, right?
That's dead on. And, you translate that to the current gold price and then do the math and you come to north of $100 an ounce. And I think it's very likely, and it'll likely even overshoot, like many markets do. We saw the ratio overshoot to 130 to 1 in March, which made no sense in itself. But you had a mass liquidation of silver at that time, where silver dropped, to $12, and then who would have thought we would have had 125 to 1 ratio? It happened for a week or so, and who would think that we could go to par? People like Ted Butler think that ultimately we're going to go to 1 to 1. I'm not in that camp, but there are people out there. I talked to Eric Sprott, on a fairly regular basis. His target's $500 silver.
That was the price that I meant. I talked about $5,000 gold, which I believe will absolutely happen. And I talked about a 10 to 1 ratio on that Jim Paplava financialsense.com thing, where I sort of got laughed at because I think that was back in 2006 or 7 or 2008. And then just a few years ago, I was on a panel with Jeff Christian of CPM Group, and I was talking about triple-digit silver, and he said that $100 silver was cocaine-induced fantasies or something like that.
In terms of your question, when will silver hit 3 digits?
Or $50.
$50 is credible. $100 is coke-induced nonsense, let's be honest. I said earlier that I wasn't raised Calvinist, I was raised Catholic, and we have a saying in the Catholic Church, I can tell you when silver will hit 3 digits, sometime after the first female pope.
Do you think it's inevitable? Do you think triple-digit silver is inevitable?
Absolutely, Mike. I do think it's inevitable. I hope it lasts. There's a couple of critical things happening in the world right now that is going to push the price. And then, of course, people are wondering, is it going to be investment demand? I think it's just going to be industrial demand for the needs of the human race. When you have a metal that's dropping in production 4 years in a row now, we don't know what the 2020 number is, but it's going to be south of 800 million ounces, and it hasn't been below that 800 million ounce number for 5 years. Consumption's still 1 billion ounces and going up, by 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% a year. And we want to go green. We want to get rid of oil and gas. We want to electrify the planet in new ways. I was told by our traders in New York that there's a huge amount of demand coming from refrigerations or freezers, because in the United States, a lot of people are buying freezers because of the COVID, and they're concerned about meat supplies. So they're buying freezers and filling their freezers with meat, and that's creating this huge strain on silver supplies. Wouldn't have thought of freezers. I know freezers do have some silver in it, but when it comes to televisions and cell phones and electric cars and solar panels, the world's going solar panel. The world's not going nuclear. You could argue about what's better. I think you and I would be on the same page of choosing what's better. But what makes more sense politically is solar panels. It's easier for a government to build a solar panel farm than it is to build a nuclear plant by your next door. So the world is going to use silver, and we're running out of silver. We can't recycle it. The recycling of silver is at historic lows. Last year, the 2019 number, we recycled about 125 million ounces of silver, which is slightly more than 10% of the supply. 90% of all the silver that's being used in commercial uses is being thrown into waste dumps, not to be recycled. To recycle silver from a cell phone is almost impossible. I know of 3 bankruptcies here in Canada of companies that are attempted to recycle metal from computers and cell phones. But the computer companies are so good at embedding these metals into the circuit boards, it costs a fortune to get them out. And we need, as you said, $5,000 gold, a couple $100 silver just to get these metals recycled. So recycling is not going to improve the supply-demand fundamentals for silver anytime in the next couple of decades, as far as I'm concerned. And we're likely 50 years from now going to have to start going into waste dumps and mining old televisions and old washers and dryers and then electronics just to supply the demands that is necessary to feed the human race of all the silver it's going to need to survive. And what price will that take?
Right. That's interesting that you said that. Back in the 70s, I used to go and see this man named Buckminster Fuller. Have you ever heard of him? Buckminster? No. Okay, well, he's pretty famous. He designed the geodesic dome and several other things, but he used to give these talks, and he was saying back then that the future, the most richest mines that there's going to be in the future are going to be all of the dumps from today. And so you're probably right that's where we're going to be getting some of our silver supply from, is all of the landfills that exist. What's happening with the talent that's out there? One of the things that I recall is going to all of these conferences and so on. All of the geologists, the hard rock geologists, were already in their 50s or 60s 10, 15 years ago. And there's been a tremendous lack of new talent because there's no schools that teach it. With the tech bubble and everything that we've had, there's been a disinterest in learning these things. Most people don't even consider it for a career path anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it's something we're very proud of. Back in 2014, we started to lose money. After a couple of pretty good years of strong cash flows. But in June of 2020, silver broke down to $16 an ounce after being, at $40 or $50 in the previous couple of years. And our average recovery globally, meaning the amount of silver and gold that we're extracting from rock that we're removing from the underground mines, we were getting just north of 60%. So about 40% of the metal, 35 to 40% of the metal was going into waste. And that's a lot of metal that's just going into waste. The mills they didn't have the technology, they didn't have the capabilities of extracting more metal from the rock. So I decided to hire the entire graduating class from the University of Durango. There was 25 young kids that we hired. These were electrical engineers, chemical engineers, you name it. They're all engineers, guys and girls, all the ages of 24, 25. And we let them loose on the business. And they came in, amazed with how poorly some of the processes that were there historically over decades and decades and decades that they could solve very easily with very little money. A lot of it was just common sense. Some of it took capital. But over the next 6 years, we're now that 6 years ago, every year we've hired the same graduating class, or at least most of them. We now have a joint venture with a second university, the University of Guanajuato, which is a famous mining university in Mexico, who has good geologists coming out of there. So we've been filling our talent pool with all these young individuals over this period of time because our focus is transferring the brain wealth of the knowledge from all the 60 and 70-year-olds to this whole new group of people. These young kids have grown up with iPhones and iPads, and they're making change. Our average recoveries today are 90%. So that's a big 60% or low 60s to 90. That's a big number. And our technical teams think that we can get up to 95% total recoveries within the next 2 years by continually pushing on using new technology. Wow. And by doing that, you become cleaner as well. You have a less environmental footprint, you have less waste, you use less power, less energy, less diesel.
You recently held back some of your production because of the low prices that happened in March.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that, why, and then what you think about all of the chicanery on the commodities exchanges?
Yeah. Look, I guess it comes back to my trading blood, back in the 80s, when I see complete disconnects in the marketplace, I try to take advantage of them. And I've done it before with First Majestic's production. And this time around in March, I witnessed our retail sales start to go through the roof, and our premiums started to skyrocket because we couldn't sell. I didn't want to sell all the inventory just to a couple of users, and we started ramping up our margins to match some of the other competitors out there, what they were doing. And but the price kept dropping, so I knew that there was a complete disconnect between the paper markets and the physical markets. So I suspended all sales. The lowest we sold silver for was $17.50, and then silver dropped all the way down to, I think, below $13 there for a day or so. So that decision alone saved the company millions of dollars. I estimate probably $5 or $6 million, because it wasn't until late June that I started to liquidate that position. I also went long into the futures market. I actually bought 1 million ounces in the futures market and made a couple $1 million there, trying to take advantage of the banks, because if they're going to be that stupid in manipulating the markets like that, why not try to take advantage of it? But I sure wasn't going to give them the physical metal, because I knew they needed it, and I wasn't going to be one of those mining companies that supplied it. I wish, and I challenged other miners to do the same, but I tend to, I guess, be ignored sometimes by some of the other mining executives.
Recently, the COMEX has added a whole, but the LBMA, I'm sorry, there's been a whole bunch of new hallmarks of bars that have been approved.